Inventory is up. So does that mean we're finally in a buyer's market? And if so, what about home prices? Are they going up? Are they going down? Or kind of stuck? And of course, the dreaded R word, recession. Are we really in a recession or is it just hype? Hey there, I'm Jaleesa McLennan. I'm a Houston area real estate agent, and this is your April 2025 market update. I'm going to taking a look at what's going on in the real estate market, inventory, home prices, whether or not it's a good time to buy or sell. So a lot to go over. Let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to be pulling data from the Houston Association of Realtors MLS, which covers as far south as Galveston, as far north as Montgomery, Texas. It's one of the most reliable sources of data about active sales, active listings, and other real estate related information for the greater Houston area. It's typically where I start when I'm doing research with my clients, when I'm doing research for myself. And I find it gives a really holistic view of the market. So we'll be diving into that. The first big news definitely want to talk about is inventory. Basically, the number of homes available for sale. Now, I've pulled up the data for January, February, and March of this year. What we can see is that there is a very gradual increase in the number of listings. It's still not as many listings as we say had a couple of years ago, but it's definitely more than what we had last year. So in March, we talked about 35,000 active listings. And so that basically is our inventory. Now, one of the things I should note here is that this number may not necessarily include for sale by owner, people not necessarily using the MLS, but selling their homes on their own or through other media. And also, it may not always include homes available directly from a builder, because I know I've helped several clients buy homes directly from a builder and never showed up on the MLS. However, the evidence does show us that inventory is increasing. Okay, so what about sales? How are we doing with that? If I pull up the sales chart, you see that sales have been going up as well. If you look at the month of March, you had over 7,000 single-family homes sold. But is that enough to say that we have a balanced market where demand and supply are equal? And the best way to answer that is to check out the months of inventory metric. And basically, that's what it tells us. It tells us if there's a balance between demand and supply of homes. So let's pull that up. Okay, so looking at our graph here, we see that for the month of March, our months of inventory was just under 5. Actually, it's 4.8 to be exact. Now, what does that number mean? Well, it means basically that it would take about 4.8 months based on the level of demand for homes we have right now. It would take 4.8 months to sell out all the available homes. Now, economists say that 5 to 6 months of inventory, is considered a balanced market. So we just under a balanced market. And they go on to say that 7 months is what they would need to have in order to call it a buyer's market. So technically speaking, we are not in a buyer's market. However, looking around and looking at the numbers, we can tell that, inventory is up, more buyers are coming out. That has to do as well with interest rates declining a bit. In fact, if we look at the Mortgage Bankers Association newsletter here, we see that for April 9th, the headline was that mortgage applications increased 20% from the previous week. So definitely buyers have a bit more say, and they're exerting that. They're getting out there and they're buying. We're not officially in the buyer's market, but what I would say is that we're definitely leaning towards. Okay, so how is inventory impacting sales prices? Well, if we look at the average sales prices for the last 3 months, we see that when we compare last year, January, February, March, the home price is actually a little stronger. And also March signifies, spring, and that season typically is when home prices start going up. So it'll be interesting to see what happens for the next couple of months if everything else going on in the world, how that'll impact home prices. But for now, March, we were looking at somewhere around $426,000 is the average home price for a single family home in the Houston area. And people may think to themselves, oh, wow, I need over $400,000 to get into a home. Something to keep in mind, one of the things about this average that's bringing it up is that luxury home sales have actually been doing really well in the first quarter. Now, why that is, it could be that these buyers believe that interest rates are going to go down and make these homes more in demand, bring up the prices, so they're getting in now. It'll be various factors, but I thought that was kind of interesting. And if we look at the data closely, we actually see that about 65% of homes are actually selling under 400,000. So definitely if your budget is under 400,000, there's still room and opportunity for you because lots of homes are selling for under that price point. And again, this is the Houston area in general. If I were to take a look at, for instance, a community like Conroe, let's take a look at what the sales numbers would look like. Okay, so average sales price in Conroe is actually a bit lower for that specific city compared to average sales price for the Greater Houston area in general. So that price is more on the 350s versus the whole Houston area, which is more like about 426,000. So again, just showing the point that it's really important if you need to make a decision buying or selling to look at what's happening specifically in your city or your subdivision. Okay, so we looked at the stats. Last thing I want to talk about is the elephant in the room, the big R, recession. Are we in a recession right now, or is it just talk? Strictly speaking, if we look at the proper definition of a recession, which is 2 consecutive quarters where there is negative GDP growth, where you have unemployment rising, and you have a slowdown of computer spending, that is when we can say we are in a recession. So strictly speaking, the US is not in a recession. Now, I know personally you may be feeling like you are in a recession, but economically, the US is not in a recession. However, we have seen, especially in the Houston area, when you talk about real estate, things have slowed down. There's no disputing it. But even though things have slowed down, it hasn't come to a stop. There's still a lot of activity. When you looked at 7,000 homes were sold in March. We have thousands of listings coming onto the market, and we have an average home price that is increasing. So despite what may be said, Houston has always seemed to be able to be very resilient in very uncertain economic times. If we think about how the Houston area fared during the pandemic. So it gives us an indicator if we do move to recession, which is possible. JP Morgan, I think they said the probability is about 65%. Goldman Sachs is saying about 45%. So if we continue in this trend, it's very possible we end up there. But there are ways that we can adjust and we can deal with it. If you're thinking of buying, you might want to think about making that move now. Because one of the things that happens in a recession is that typically interest rates come down. If interest rates come down, it will bring more buyers who are able into the market. If that happens, then if you are not able to compete with a lot of buyers who have a lot of cash, then it may reduce your ability to be able to purchase a home. If you are selling, again, might be a good idea if you really need to sell now, or maybe consider other options. Maybe can you rent the home and buy another home? Can you do a refinance? There might be other options for you to consider. So really, whatever you're doing, buying or selling, always be aware and take into consideration what's going on in the market, but really examine your situation versus the data, your situation versus, where you live, where you want to go to if you're selling and you need to buy another home. Make it a personal exercise, figuring out how to deal and adjust. One of the things I know I'm doing, and I'm suggesting to all my clients, is whether or not a recession comes, I'm just preparing, trying my best to be prepared. And that means doing my best to improve my credit, bring my debts down, and have as much disposable income as I can. The reality is, if we do end up in a recession, a lot of people will have challenging times. But then there are also a lot of people who will be able to take advantage of certain opportunities. And that comes with being prepared. So whatever happens, I will be following every month, looking at the data, seeing where we're at, and whatever you decide to do, whether you want to buy, sell, hold on, feel free to reach out and just have a discussion. I love talking the data, so I'd be happy to do that. My information is in the description below. If you haven't already done so, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. If you found this information useful, feel free to share or drop a comment or like. I love hearing from people, love ask me questions, love to hear your thoughts and ideas. I'm here for it all. So thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you next month, the update next month, and we'll see what's happening in the market then. Looking forward to it. Thank you. Take care.